deep dive for October 27th, 2022, all things new and improved. Cindy came up with this idea of kind of reviewing all the stuff we learned over the summer when we were kind of scrambling to do outreach events, whether it was skills fairs or drills. A lot of good things happened. Cindy and I see a lot of it because we try and make it to most of the drills. But if you're not there, you just don't see it. So we're trying to capture all the good ideas that happened over the summer and present it as fodder for thought. So that's kind of what tonight's about. This is our agenda, and we'll just go through each of these topics. And then if there's anything else anybody has at the tail end, we will discuss that too. So our first thing is Linda Norland from the Lake Seward Hub. I'm going to stop sharing. She's going to start sharing and go through her banners.
Okay, I'm going to show you a few of the banners we've done, also some signs, a flyer, and some hub elements that we improved over the summer. When we first got our grant in 2019, we made a couple of big banners that are 3 feet by 6 feet. And since that's a standard size, you can get these made just in someplace like we got them from Office Depot. Probably a lot of the hubs already have things like this. We did have to use a piece of artwork that wasn't the actual hub logo, that little beaming antenna thing in the middle, because I couldn't blow it up that big. It turned all blurry and soft, and I didn't have the time to make a new one. So we have a slightly off-brand one, but and then we use that in our tents, but we can also use it on fences and probably the way a lot of hubs do. But we did do something a little bit different. We also made what we call kind of a table of contents for our hub, and we imagined that at an entrance to our hub we would have that title banner on one side, maybe of the entrance, and then the other side we would have who we are, that we're community members, we're neighbors, and also what can you do in this hub. And we spent a lot of time in the language of it to make it really straightforward, plain language. And then we designated areas where these things would happen. As I said, we did this quite early on, but we felt pretty confident we could do it because even if area A and C change, we could slap a little, snipe over those, and it's not going to change what the actual different zones of the hub. And then we did a little disclaimer on the bottom about what a hub is not. Then more recently, when we're trying to recruit more volunteers, we made a couple of other banners to put in signboards that are actually outside our community club. There's a Lakewood Seward Park Community Club. Some of you have been to the building. It's about 100 years old. And I think the signboards are about 100 years old too. But I had to make the type as big as possible because these are outdoors on the street. And they're right on 50th and Angela. And so when the traffic comes like from one direction, you see it driving this way, and the other direction, you see it because they're in a wedge. And you see, and so I had to make sure that the type was big enough that you could read it from the street. And I just wanted to tell people that there's a real quick and dirty way you can do that. Even if you can't mock up the whole banner, just take a letter-sized piece of paper and make those letters as big as you can. Just a couple letters. This turned out to be 270 point and 303 point type. And take it out on the street, paste it up there, and go down on the street and look, because a lot of things, you just have to prototype things. And I think that many of the things I've seen in the hubs are not big enough scale for people to read. And if you had crowds, you will never be able to read them. So I used to design exhibits. So this is one of the things that I learned in that. And then this is a flyer we did this summer also for our recruitment. Again, I'm sure many of the hubs have flyers, but we spend a lot of time in the language on the back of what do you do when you're not deploying, and then what do you do when you do deploy, and what are the benefits of being a volunteer. So I'm happy to share these with people, and if anybody actually wants the artwork and they want to plug in the name of their own hub, it's fine with me. The photos are from the drill this summer on the south end of town. They were in Jefferson Park, The great thing about everybody being masked is you don't have to worry about who needs to, you ask permission for their photo. The one woman from our hub who was in one of these photos didn't even recognize that it was herself. She was the one putting up the flyers. Okay, so one other thing we did this summer, and this is a little bit beyond the banner thing, but I'm just saying, when you're talking about improvements, I noticed that many of the hubs are using those little plastic pockets.
Pantry organizers or
Yeah,
shoe holders.
these were pantry organizers. And one of the things that I felt really did not work at the hub drill this summer was that when you have just a few of those and you have a whole bunch of messages, then they end up getting folded or behind one another. And it didn't seem to me that it was really working. And so, and especially if they were in the back of a tent and people had to walk up way into the back of the tent. Now, one of the things that is a limitation for us in our park, but we're trying to turn it into an asset, is that we don't really have fences we can put things up on, and we don't have very many tents. So we're using the soccer goalposts as our main structures there. And this is great because they're more than 18 feet wide. And so this is just a little prototype of one corner of what the lost and found would be, but it will have 4 headers on it: lost and found, missing persons, missing pets, messages. And this is just 1/6 of the number of pockets. So we will have a total of 180 pockets going across for the lost and found. And we're just hanging those on some dowels, and we're not using the hooks that came with the pantry organizers. We're using S hooks that we bought on Amazon. And we think it's going to work out pretty well. You have to tape these strips together. Those are 2 strips that came in the same package. But I think, since it's probably going to rain wherever we're deploying, we figured the plastic is a good idea, and we would just try to work on that. Those headers are vinyl banners. They're 8 inches by 36 inches. That's not a standard size. And so I had to really look around town, and I went to a FedEx that did it, and they were terrible, and they had to do it more than once. And so I don't really have a good vendor to recommend to you, but I think that it's going to work out pretty well. And I'll show you the next one. We also, for our resource wall, and I'm going to give you a close-up view in a minute, we're going to use the other soccer goalpost for our resource wall. And this is just half of the boards we have. We have 10 boards. So we could do need have for every category. Now, this is a first prototype without our headers on it. The first prototype didn't really work because the dowels were, they were bending, because these boards are fairly heavy. And so I'll show you how we resolved it. So the headers are the same headers that everybody has: the food and water, and the medical and sanitation and all that. But we're using, each header is the same size as the boards, and we're using little bungees to put the headers up on the goalposts. And then we're using these orange gear ties that have loops in them, and those actually feed the S hook that holds them in from the board to the loop fits in really nicely. So they just hang there. And then the only thing that's inaccurate about this little prototype is, okay, if you only had, let's say you didn't have very many needs or haves, you could just use one of those boards, and that's where the need thing would be, and the have would be. And that's one of the little colored forms in there. I should have put more of the little colored forms on, but the same ones that a lot of people are using. I think I think maybe Victory Heights and some others are using those pastel forms. Anyway, what it ought to look like here, if you had enough needs and haves, these are Velcro. These little need and have things are laminated and Velcroed on the back, and there's 3 little Velcro spots on the top. So in fact, need would be in the middle at that top board, and have would be in the middle on the bottom board. So you could have all the needs on top and all the haves on bottom if you had enough to use all 10 boards. So, and that's elastic. Those are white bands of elastic that are stapled around there. And that's one of our members made that. So And the elastic seems to be holding up really well. We've had these a couple of years and they're not, you know, they don't seem to be losing their zing. So those are our little graphical improvements and things.
Very cool. Cindy has her hand up.
Yeah.
Do these blackboards, they're just, can you go back one? They're
Yeah.
just wood and you painted them.
They're made out of these underlayment boards. They're kind of like masonite of old, but they're not rough on the back. They're smooth on both sides, and they're not very thick. And they're from Dunn Lumber, and they're cheap. We paid $60, and we got 10 boards out of them. So for $6 a board,
Good.
we did have to paint them, but and drill holes in the corners. But you know, they're working out really well for us.
Do they fit in your hub box, and do you have a small hub box or a big hub box?
We have a big hub box.
But
We have
they fit
one
in
of
your
those big
box.
job boxes that's, you know,
Okay.
it's probably one of the bigger boxes. And I didn't think to bring a photo of what our box looks like, but when you get, we can get 3 tents, 3 tables, and these boards, and even a couple of whiteboards that are rigid also, and a bunch of other stuff.
While we're on this subject, I made similar banners, but for our tents. And I just used white fabric and black magic marker
Mhm.
instead of the vinyl kind of thing. But same kind of thing. I'm hoping mine are as durable. They may not be.
By the way,
That's very
and
cool.
all the banners have grommets in the corners. They were supposed, yeah.
Excellent. Anybody got any questions for Linda?
Very creative.
Yeah,
Very beautifully done.
Yeah.
Really
very
thoughtful.
nice.
Lovely.
All right. Thanks, Linda.
Sure.
I love the use of the dowels.
Yeah, yeah, and those are cheap too. So, you know, and those gear ties that are just, you know, twist and you can just they're more versatile than the bungees.
Okay, great. So Susie, you're next. Just to talk about your really, I thought it was really imaginative and manageable, and you just seemed like it was so under control. Having these smaller drills where your goal was achievable and very, very clear. And so I think folks would just appreciate an idea that doesn't seem so overwhelming as a large hub drill.
Okay. Hi, I'm Susie from one of the co-captains from North Capitol Hill. In 2.5 months, it turns out I think I've used this principle in 4 different ways. So I'll just explain the principle in the application. And we stumbled on the value of it by necessity and accident. Cindy actually suggested that we do a mini drill, which seemed a feasible goal considering our hub only reactivated in June with an initial team of 3, a basic box, the usual education and info station softscape, but no hardscape. What we had going for us was a large parking lot with a laurel hedge running the length of it, 2 borrowed tarps, and 100 feet of marine line, as well as great mentorship, particularly from Madison Park Hub and the Victory Heights Quick Start template. By accepting those givens and setting manageable goals of 4 stations in 2 hours, those who turned out experienced a drill where they were set up for success, where they developed trust for the hub's respect for time and resources, and where they developed trust in the hub process as improvisational, feedback positive, and focused on a common goal. Of the 15 neighbors who came to the drill, about 2/3 are now among our core team. While their feedback directed the revisions I made to the Quick Start Guide, their response to the hub's respect for time and resources directed my question of how to proceed with winter coming, the uncertainty about my team's volunteer capacity, because I'd really never met all but 3 of these people before, and we still just had a hedge and 100 feet of rope. So I devised a series of incremental drill and non-drill tasks, as well as co-captain tasks that, depending on the team's sign-up response, would decide if the next goal was a $3,000 fall grant application or a $300 modest improvement on the rope by early November. I think letting their collective volunteer capacity decide the hub's course reinforced trust in the hub's respect for their time and for resources. And a couple of unintended consequences. I think the incremental task charts articulated not only manageable steps to 2 visions toward hub preparedness, but engaged the volunteers in preparedness's educational process. We were now a team galvanized by a collective decision and a common goal with the means. I think the sign-up invitation to engage, each at our own pace and with our own skill levels, empowered contributions and focused our problem solving. The upshot is a revised quick start guide that has added 5 entire sections that precede the original's direction to get out the hardscape. While retaining respect for the unknown and the improvisational response, through team members' focused problem solving, we've added, first of all, a start here section to evaluate whether or not and how we might need to assist with an evacuation because we're in a church parking lot. We've added a sign-in section with safety roles because we're close to potential utility hazards. We have an off-site gear retrieval section because basically we still only have the rope. And we have a signage section for both on-site and off-site, in part because we represent a large area. And lastly, we have a sanitation section that we've added to take care of the team's comfort. Our plan through the winter is to devote 15 minutes each meeting to each of these sections in a kind of mini tabletop drill. Doing so serves multiple purposes. It lets the whole team review the guide for errors and omissions we could prepare for. It familiarizes the whole team with the plan, building confidence and mental muscle memory. And it builds critical imagination that contributes to being prepared and responsive problem solvers.
Fantastic, Susie. Good description. When you are doing your 15-minute during the winter, covering, how are you thinking about integrating somebody who shows up for the first time at meeting number 4?
That's a great question.
Like I'm going, I want to think ahead because that always happens to me,
Yeah.
Can you have this on a Google Drive or how are you sharing it? Can you share it in advance? Is it kind of self-explanatory that way? Or do you have a mentor buddy kind of thing? Or
We are encouraging the buddy process a lot in our hub, particularly because we also have the principle of rotating in and out of leadership positions. And this began with the notion of the hub manager role so that the same person isn't hub manager every time. So we develop some depth and a backup. And so the outgoing hub manager becomes the mentor for the incoming hub manager. And I really found having a hub manager buddy who was the timekeeper and alerted me to problems on the side that I wasn't paying attention to was really a useful thing. And so the hub manager buddy can also become someone who is the hub manager the next time around. So just a good sort of mentoring system.
okay.
Yeah. But I don't have an answer for your question as to how to integrate that person who's coming for the first time in the 4th meeting.
But it sounds like you've got enough flexibility and people will be super willing to share what they've learned. So you don't have to do all the, briefing stuff.
Right.
I will hunt around and in between the breaks of the next speakers, I'm going to bring up a picture of your shrub and rope because there is no reason any of us can ever complain again about lack of structure when you see what they have to deal with in their parking lots.
Yeah. Susie, how long did each of your drills last?
Our first mini drill was 2 hours. Our meetings are
fast.
1 hour, and Russ really impressed it upon me, the fact that if you stick to the time that you said you're going to stick to, your people will gain confidence in their time management too. Yeah, our meetings are 1 hour, and we have an upcoming reverse checklist work party, and that's scheduled as 2 hours. So again, we're going to be really careful about meeting that constraint.
Nice.
Pam,
Thanks.
I can share those pictures real quick if you want.
Yeah, go ahead. Yeah, can you see the rope?
So I don't know if I can advance or not. So that's the, kind of the resources. I think this was messages.
Volunteer. Yeah, the orange was
Yeah, volunteer. And then there's one other one. I don't know where there's a posters that people are standing around looking at.
Pretty basic.
Yeah. We're going to hear from Sarah. She's going to talk about, they created bags for each of their hub volunteer roles to get those volunteers up and moving quickly. So go ahead, Sarah.
I don't have a picture of it, but it would be hard to see inside the box anyway, but we have a big box. And we have done quick starts for the opening the box, and then a quick start for each job. And that includes a equipment list on the end of the quick start for each job. So there's one for all of, each role. And we don't have fancy bags. We have, we have grocery, the plastic grocery bags. We have various things the gym bags that somebody had left over, but they're marked and they have everybody's stuff in them. And unless they say, educator, find posters in a roll on the first shelf. So what we've done is, in our last row, we said, okay, well, we were gonna do this, but I think, no, that's right. We set up the hardscape. Ann and Cindy were there, and Susie was there. And then we gave each person a bag and said, go to it, read the instructions, see if you can do it. And people loved it. And then at the end, it was clean up your spot by putting everything in your bag and bring it back to us, and we'll stuff it in there. There isn't, other than more forms, there's not a lot of restocking. In many of it, we are using the shoe bag system, and we'll go to that next. But so it's fairly easy to take down and get your stuff in your bag. And then we have the big box. We have we hope to have 4 tents, 4 tables. We haven't gotten all this yet, but we have 2 tents and we have 1 giant table but we're going to get rid of that and get the 4 little tables. And we hope then to get a bunch of boards. We don't have the boards yet. And then all of these bags go up on if you have one of the big boxes, they go on the second level, and they fit in there.
Excellent. Thanks,
So
Sarah.
that's one thing we've done.
Would you be willing to share that list of what's in each bag? I'd love to start with that.
Yeah, I'll give you the quick starts. I could give
Okay.
you each of the quick starts. So that's like 9 or 10 quick starts.
Beautiful.
Um,
Okay.
It was a very impressive system.
Yeah.
It's kind of nice to know you can just, but in the times before, people keep going back to the box. They don't have what they need. So that means, yeah, we do have to duplicate. You each need scissors, and you need tape, and you need this, and you need that. So that we don't
Right.
have so much going back to the box for the basics.
A while back, we had this conversation about the concern with calling one of our stations the resource tent and the resource manager, and how that word resource doesn't land well with a lot of folks. So I'm going to stop talking and
I mean, I don't even know when it was. Maybe last year. It feels like a couple years ago at this point, but I think it was maybe last year. And after we did a big drill one of the things that a lot of us talked about was, what are we sending to the resources tent? And it was depending on who was, guiding people and who was at each tent. Sometimes it was things, sometimes it was like things that would be better in information. Sometimes it was things that were people-based. So after polling hub captains meetings a couple of times, we landed on substituting supplies for resources, meaning that, we have the supplies tent, and that kind of gives you more of an idea of stuff as opposed to like it's really about stuff that we have to like keep track of, right? So those needs and haves, whereas the volunteer tent is people that have a skill, and the information tent is things that we don't need to keep track of, right? So if someone has a grill that someone can use, then we're not going to keep track of that grill, right? We're going to put that in information tent and have people go to that person. So that led to the change to supplies. And you can go forward and keep getting more bullets up there. Yeah. So for new hubs, it'll be updated in the Google Drive, but for existing hubs, you can kind of choose how you want to do this. We don't want to have to print out 5 million more sheets of paper. So my recommendation would be to, just kind of change it in your own books, whether that's, crossing out or white out, whatever you want to do, to have it be the supply manager versus the resource manager. But the new hubs, it will be updated for like documents from the Google Drive going forward. And then, yeah, the example of, someone comes and says, I have a gas grill that people can use to, cook food or whatever. That was an example of, does this go in information because it's good information for a lot of people to know? Does it go in a resource because it's a grill? Or does it go in volunteer because it's a person coming to tell us about this grill that they have? So that's kind of what led to the change of the name and saying, well, do we want to keep track of this resource? No, it's not, boxes of diapers or things like that. It's someone's grill. So really, we just want to let people know this, but we don't want to take on the burden of keeping track of it. So that's an example of where that would go to information rather than supply or volunteer. And then the paperwork. So for the supply manager and the needs and haves, it is a lot of paperwork. And I know one of you had mentioned like it can get, multiple papers can get behind each other and it can get kind of confusing. And space is always something that is an issue. And so there's different options, right? It's really what is going to work best for your hub. And brainstorming with a couple different hub captains, we had the idea that you could do like a index card box. You could do can you go back to the slide before that real quick? Yeah. So you could do like an index card box or this kind of accordion folder sort of thing where it has letters, it has tabs, so you can do different sections on there. And then if you can go forward, also a binder is an option to do if you want to do tabs and have it be a binder that can more easily be like passed off from person to person or put away at night, things like that. So that was some of the options. And then you can go, yeah, and then we have, as a few of you have talked about, the option for like the organizer, the hanging organizer. And this could be used in conjunction with any of those other things, like with the shoebox, or it could be used instead of it. Really, like I said, it's kind of, dealer's choice. It's choose your own adventure. So picking out what's going to work best for your hub is the best way to go on that. And what you feel like works from doing mini drills or examples that you all talk about in your hubs.
And real quick, the one on the right, this is a lot of the older hubs have that system where it is a big sheet, and they have glued plastic, it's hard to see in this picture, but they have glued plastic pockets onto the sheet. So that's super doable. Cindy can walk you through it. It's plastic and glue gun and just some kind of fabric or plastic sheeting.
Yeah.
Don't forget, you can always tape papers to the wall or to the bushes. So
Yeah.
just different options for organizing stuff.
Exactly. I think you have to try out different things and figure out what you want to do. But, you know, I feel like in Anne's style, in an emergency, you're going to do with what you have.
So Melissa, in our community in Madison Park, we did struggle with resource manager. People didn't seem to know what it was.
Yeah.
So we have supply and equipment.
Mhm.
I'm sure you guys probably discussed that.
Yeah.
It just seemed like it would help people know that equipment can also come to us.
I think that sounds great. I like it's, you know, I think if we can get some consistency on having supply in there, and if you have, you know, supply and equipment, I don't see an issue with that unless, you know, Anne and Cindy feel differently. But yeah, I think it's, you know, again, customizing it to fit your hub and your community.
Yeah, I just wanted to say that we felt that one of the limitations of having card files or folders or notebooks is that only one person can handle it at a time.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
the one thing that's not really totally realistic about these drills is we don't know how many people are going to come to the hub.
Yeah.
And we're
Yeah.
we're really imagining that if we have a big enough quake, there could be a couple hundred people milling around there,
Yeah.
And if there are a couple hundred people there, then those systems will not work. So, we have to think about, what do we need to scale this to? And that's why we're trying to think, big type and kind of up a little bit, like so that if you had a couple dozen people milling around in front of this, what we've been calling the need have board. We never really
Yeah.
liked the word resource either. If you had a bunch of people, then could you handle it? So that's what we're trying to think about all the time when we're doing this stuff.
Yeah, I hear what you're saying. I think one of the things that kind of changed my perspective on this was Anne's conversation a long time ago that, when you, after an actual emergency and you have 200 people that show up, you're going to rope, a dozen of those people to say, hey, do you want to come help us with all these people that need and have things? And you're going to be able to have people there that are wanting to help or have things that they can do. So I think that's where, all this conversation of like the quick start guide and the bags is really cool because it helps people jump into it. Most of us, I think like a lot of us are unique here with the hubs, right? In that we're thinking about this all the time, but most of our neighbors are not. So I think that's what's really cool is that with these quick start things and these bags and kind of these other things that you all have been developing, that we can use some of those people that come after a disaster that want to help. People want to have something to do after a disaster. And so being able to say, come help us with this. And I think it's really about the hub. If you have, I know some people did like basic categories on the top of the sheet, and then the details of that need and have would be in the box or in the binder or things like that. But it really depends on the format you have on your hub and trying out different things and seeing what works best. If you feel like you have a good system, keep that system, right? If it's not broken, don't fix it. So I think for some of us, it felt like it wasn't working very well, or we couldn't figure out very well. And so we wanted different options and kind of combining some of the options and things like that.
Thanks, Melissa. Go ahead, Cindy.
Yeah, and the addition to the high volume, hundreds, I should go back and see if I can get pictures from 9/11 and the Christchurch earthquake, because there were pictures of what basically looked like hubs. 9/11 was blocks and blocks of plywood hung on chain link fences with messages tacked to it, right? So
Yeah.
a lot of the self-serve stuff just grew linearly. And then Superstorm Sandy was Post-its all over walls inside churches. So Linda's point about if it's one person can be the only one flipping through the volume.
Yeah.
Well, if your neighborhood is small and you're not seeing a lot of people, that might work, but you might
Right.
end up putting stuff up depending on volume. And my original reason I raised my hand was the guy with the barbecue is very different than how to get to the hospital.
Right.
And I've seen hubs do, the messages come in linear, like just in a time flow, and they'll go
Yeah.
guy with barbecue, and that gets put up there, something else, hospital closed, and they'll use a different color to write that. So it pops out.
That's a good idea.
So that's one way. And then the other way is I'm thinking after watching this, I would just devote one where we try and keep the outside stuff, like what bridges are open and like that beyond the neighborhood, that's on one board or set of boards. And then all this internal help your neighbor, help offered and community stuff goes on another set. So
Ann and I did talk about that of like, do we need more stuff for the information manager? I'm not sure if you were going to talk about that tonight or not, Ann.
No, not necessarily, but
Okay.
I think we all kind of realize that if
Yeah.
we've got a fairly standard box, I think we're going to run out of writing space pretty quickly. That's when you use
Yeah.
the back of the self-help posters and
Yeah.
whatever else you can find, whatever else you can scavenge from your neighborhood.
Yeah, but you're definitely right, Cindy. I like how you talked about it too. I think there's like infrastructure info, right? Like
Yeah.
hospitals, roads, bridges, and then there's like community, info, neighborhood info.
Right.
Those are kind of two different things and two different priorities. So yeah, definitely a good division there.
No,
Yeah.
Susie came to our drill, and she and her buddy at the information manager site, it occurred to them that they should have categories, and they created categories like food and water.
That's right.
Susie, do you remember?
Nice job.
One was food and water, one was medical, one was traffic related. What would the last one have been?
I have a
You-
picture of it.
Shelter?
I can't find it.
Shelter, the last one
Oh,
was shelter.
yeah.
Yeah.
That
And
makes a lot of sense.
I've been thinking about the cost of doing more of those laminated huge poster boards is prohibitive, in my view. So I've been trying to find alternatives to that are still waterproof. And I'm right now testing a corrugated plastic board that's available at one of the art supply stores on 45th and the freeway. It's an affordable price for the size. It can easily be grommeted. And what I need to test is that using a regular whiteboard marker, that it can be erased clearly enough. There might be some shadow effect over time. And then do you use, my question then would be, do you use something like
A clear contact paper?
no, that's an idea too, but I was going to say something like a rubbing alcohol just to wipe the board clean, and then start again. So these are things I'm experimenting with right now.
The dry erase should dry erase off those, I would hope.
It should, but the guy at the art supply store said that there might be a kind of ghosting effect
Yeah.
that you
I
would
think
need
so.
to use.
Especially if it gets left on there for, any amount of
Yeah.
more than a couple hours, it'll ghost. But Jim and I had that, at the big drill, whenever it was, Jim and I had that conversation too of, I just remember Jim like running out of space on the boards in the info tent, and he was like, I don't know where to put all this information. So,
Right.
we talked about that too of like, do we need categories? Do we need a log of things? Like, how do we kind of organize the information better? So yeah, I think it really kind of, it depends on what your hub has access to and what you can do. But, I think definitely like, I see a need for at minimum, kind of what Cindy talked about of like more infrastructure versus community or neighborhood stuff rather. And then if you have the capacity doing more specific categories in that even. like
Great.
basic
Linda?
needs or something.
I just want to
Sorry,
know,
Melissa.
I love Susie that you're going to be testing this. Then how do we find out what you found?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I'm really happy about this evening for the sharing, and I want to keep the sharing going because I think this is really important part of the hubs.
Yeah.
Right.
Susie, you'll report out?
Definitely, I'll report out.
Great.
Oh, Matt put in the chat, coat with dry erase paint. That's a
Yeah.
really smart
But-
idea.
Oh,
Buy that
okay.
at Home Depot, and you could coat most fairly smooth surfaces with that and get that extra performance.
Hmm,
Sweet. And then if it did ghost, you could paint it, again, 2 years from now, or whatever.
Sure. Yeah.
that's true.
Okay, in the interest of time, we'd kind of like to keep going. Any other last minute questions for Melissa?
Just a last minute question. What about the archiving of all of these forms that are produced? At the end of a day or at the end of a week? How do you archive this material? How long do you have to keep it?
I'm gonna postpone that question because you are gonna talk about shutting down the hub and we can talk about it then.
Okay, great.
So we're gonna move on to Jim in the Finney Hub. He has worked on some of the volunteer coordinator issues. So organizing paperwork, kind of Jim and Melissa and a couple of the other hub captains have talked about those 3 ways at least, and then don't forget the blank wall. And then test drive in 2023. And I'm going to shut up there, Jim, and let you talk.
Yeah, we've the old box binder organizer pocket sheet. I think everybody has kind of their preferences, their mindset, what works for them. My thought, at least for volunteer coordinator, is hubs should implement however they want, but have a common process across hubs. So if you have a pocket sheet versus a card catalog, that's what you would put in the card catalog is what you would put on the sheets, vice versa. It's where you put it, but keeping track of the information, I think would be beneficial for us to have a common process. So Anne and I, Anne came up with an alternative volunteer form that we test drove at Sarah's Madison Park drill.
Jim, I'm gonna go forward to that in the slides. So on the left is the poster kind of. Go ahead, Jim.
So on the right is the form, which is kind of free-form text entry. It lists the categories: construction, healthcare, transportation. And then on the left, that's a poster that would be hung that volunteers approaching the hub could see. And they write in their skills. And below the categories are, kind of specific skills, plus also people can put in things that aren't listed there. And one thing I especially like about this is, well, first of all, it's easier at a glance to read versus processing checkboxes. But what I especially like is people can add qualifiers like limited plumbing, or I can help someone else, but I can't do it myself. Or I'm a contractor, additional information like that. So with the volunteer coordinator, there is the age-old problem of one-to-many. It's a mental matrix, but how do you keep track of it? What Anne and I test drove at the Madison Park drill used pocket sheets. So that's the language I'll be using. And so we had this pocket sheet that has all the categories, and volunteers fill out the forms that we were showing, and they're stuck in a category. Now, somebody can clear debris and they're also a roofer. Where do you put them? And I think it's basically the volunteer coordinator takes the best shot. Things to consider are what's my current inventory of skills. I have somebody that can clear debris and they're a roofer, but I've already got 2 roofers. So I'll put them in the other category. Also, there are higher need skills, meaning likely to have more need for that. And we don't want that to get lost, that they have that skill. And then also there are, I guess, scarce or less common skills, like a special needs, somebody that has special needs care skills. So the volunteer coordinator takes their best shot, and if necessary, the tool would exist to take a blank form. I'll use an example. I have a vet and a plumber. I mean, somebody that is a vet and a plumber. And in that scenario, I would put their sheet under plumber, more likely to need them than a vet, is my thinking as a volunteer coordinator. And then I'll take a blank sheet, put their name on. I won't fill out all their information, but just their name. And I'll say, C plumber. And then stick that in the vet sheet. So if we need a vet, we want to be able to find that person and go to the vet pocket, and that'll tell us where we can find that person's name. And again, I keep coming back to a volunteer coordinator would just take their best guess. Now, another approach is to have a card file that kind of has an indexing scheme. But I kind of feel that we need to more fly by the seat of our pants. And if things are going to vary depending on how many people we have, how busy, but that's the thought there. And
Yeah, just wait.
people that are on shift, that's the term I came up with. Either they're sitting there at the hub or they're out in the field doing a volunteer job. We were thinking of having a separate pocket sheet, just a small one, and those individuals on shift, their sheets would be posted there. At a glance, you can see what skills you have at your disposal. Also, you can kind of get to know your volunteers better. You know, people enjoy being addressed by their first name. And when you're talking to them about such and such, the fact that you know that they're also an electrician or something, that just interaction with people, that makes them feel valued. So I think that's a side benefit of having their sheets pulled aside. And then when they are done with their shift, their sheet would go back into the category pockets.
Cindy, you had your hand up?
Yeah, going, I don't think I understood that. So you've got a roofer and a plumber and a cook. And the roofer and the plumber are on shift waiting there at the hub to be told where to go. Are you saying the roofer and the plumber get pulled out of the roofer and plumber pockets and put together in a on-shift pocket?
Each of the on-shift volunteers, their sheets are readily visible.
So plumber might have all the plumbers and then a pocket next to it with here's who's really here at the hub.
No, you have a sheet with all the categories like the picture showed. Then separately, you have a small sheet or maybe a board with magnets or maybe tape on something. And you have, let's say, 4 volunteers on shift. Those 4 volunteer sheets would be posted in some form.
So if I'm looking for a plumber, do I go to the plumber pocket or do I have to go over there and look through any of the sheets on shift for plumbers? And
I think that if a need for a plumber came in, you would know that you have a plumber standing by, because that's the level of knowledge you would have for the people hanging out at the volunteer tent.
I think of
And-
shift change. That's what I'm worried about.
Yeah.
New hub manager or volunteer manager comes in. And I guess it's just a familiarization, you know, they just go through who's standing here and then they know the 20 sheets that are up there, of people who said they're standing by. Okay, I think I got it.
So we'd have, a need comes in, you would first look at the sheets of those on shift.
Mhm.
And you see that you have it or you don't. You also see the skills that are going by as you're scanning of those you do have. So after a while, you get a sense of kind of what you have on hand. That's my thought.
Got it.
There's definitely pros and cons for this, and it kind of depends on, is the volunteer coordinator just putting all those papers in the right pockets so that the public can find what they want? Or is the volunteer coordinator actively sending out teams on assignment? You know, it kind of depends on what your focus is at that moment, whether or not you would go to the trouble, because it is a little more trouble to get all those forms together of the folks sitting in your little volunteer area, so that you can deploy them smartly. So yeah, pros and cons. The other thing Jim and I talked about yesterday, I guess it was the importance of name tags, which we're really good about when we do our hub drills and stuff. But it would be a very smart thing to stock up on name tags and throw it in your hub box, so that your volunteers that are hanging around waiting for an assignment can start talking to one another, and you know, they figure out strengths before they even have to go out in the field together. So I think name tags are a really good idea.
One question that remains is, you have this inventory of skills in the neighborhood and a need comes in for skill XYZ. They are not on shift. So do we just give the address of that person to the person in need?
I
And
would.
then do we need to kind of confirm with the person that possesses the skills, is it okay to send people to your house?
We have talked about that. If somebody says, I don't want them to come to my address, then we have to say, so when are you going to be? That's what the
Yeah.
availability line is.
Availability.
You're going to come back between 1 and 4 every day. Not everybody wants someone showing up at their house, or they might live in an apartment where you can't even get into it. So
Yeah.
Or also, depending on what the state of their family accommodations are.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah.
You know, that's a really good point about what that you all just discussed, this last point about how do you know whether the person's going to be willing to receive people at their home? Is there some way the form at the bottom line, that bottom availability could somehow let you know? So we would be sure that if they come in and talk to us and we sign them up as volunteers, we find that out, check, they can come to you. You know, neighbors can come to you for help in your home. Or when are you available? I know you don't want to put many things on, but
Yeah, yeah.
I feel like, you know, you're the one who wants something. You sort of have to wait for someone else to be available to offer it, even given the situation that we're in. If somebody was about to have a baby, yeah, I would probably go to someone else's house and ask them to help out. But otherwise, you're going to have to wait until someone comes back around and is able to help you. I mean, people might need that time alone at that point in time, right?
Gabrielle, I was thinking it was just the opposite.
yeah, well, it was.
I don't know what I'm saying is right. It's just kind of how it struck me as I heard it. So,
But what
Yeah.
Sarah was asking for is it, can the form be made so that we remember to say, you're going to give us your address, okay to send people there, and availability, you know, is much clearer about their commitment to come back.
People are just gonna have to put boundaries on those things, you know, if there's one electrician, they're not gonna want to work 10 hours a day, you know, they're gonna have their own stuff to take care
Yeah.
of.
I'm gonna put that down as something to keep noodling on, about how to modify the form to get a little bit more information from our volunteers, so we know what they think will work for them.
This is probably very basic to other people, but are we assuming that the volunteer coordinator is kind of our HR person for getting, first filling the positions in the hub and then sending people out? I mean, all these categories are assuming these are people who are going to go help other neighbors, but it seems to me we'd have to staff the hub first, right?
Yeah, and in their job description, that's one of the first couple bullets is make sure your hub is full up with volunteers.
But that's a good point, is that is not on that form.
No,
Oh, yeah.
So pick a category and say hub volunteer, right? Stick it on the detail list.
Hmm, okay.
Maybe
because it
responder.
doesn't
or
matter
something.
whether you're an electrician or, you know, a doctor. We can take hub volunteers of pretty much every walk of anything if they're, you know.
Yeah, there's
Yeah,
just no
they got a
prompt.
pulse.
Yeah, there's no
Yeah.
prompt for it though.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Good catch.
And it would be easier if the volunteer coordinator had a running list of people that would be okay to be the greeter instead of having to deal with it every single day. Yeah, I'd love
yeah,
that.
That makes it easier for recruiting. You know, you're trying to bring neighbors in, you know, on the job training. If one of the choices is to work here at the hub,
Yeah,
then, and some people that's kind of might be their default contribution. You know,
Yeah,
I'm not a
I'd love it.
plumber, I don't do this, all this, but I'll help out anyway. And
yeah. I'll
yeah,
be the
putting,
greeter. Yeah.
putting that on that category on is good.
So Susie has started doing drills, I think this is correct, on how to pack up the hub each evening. So we're just going to listen to Susie talk quickly about her, what she's thinking is, because I don't know that any of us have ever really figured out how we're going to pack this up so we can open up the next day.
And I would love your thoughts on this because ours isn't happening until November 6th.
Okay.
Our box is in a shed that's 5 by 7. After our mini drill, we were so elated, we simply locked the shed door. We know it's all in there, including the rope, but nobody knows just where. So the plan is hardscape fits behind and in front of the box. Shelving will be on one side of the box for the start here and the safety bins. And on the other side, the labeled signage and sanitation gear. Everything else is in bins inside the box. Our quick start guide takes the form of a checklist. We thought it was finished until we remembered that we had locked that shed door. So we're holding a reverse checklist work party on Sunday, November 6th to lay out all the supplies and gear inside on tables, repack and label the bins, create checklists of their contents that will be taped to the insides of the bins list, much like Madison Park has the start here guides inside the bags. And I think this event will get everyone involved, not just the hub manager. It will give everybody an appreciation of all the moving parts and practice in striking the hub each night to ready it for the next day. It entails putting things back where they belong, archiving messages, and replenishing items like forms.
My box is so tight. There's so much in it. I really feel like I need to draw a diagram of where everything goes. Because if you don't put it in there right, you'll be there for an hour and a half trying to, you know.
Spatial management.
Yeah, Jenga it into place.
Well, I think the bags are the thing. Because in our case, we had the little pantry holders, just like you did,
Mhm.
Linda, and some of the others. And you just unhook those, and they are their own storage. They have their own storage pocket. So anyway, fold them up, you put them in your bag, put all your other stuff in your bag, and you go put it in the hub on the shelf. And then everybody takes down the hardscape and it goes into the bottom.
All right. Anything else with shutting down a hub at the end of the evening?
Oh, what about
Okay.
the archiving question? How long do you have to keep for?
So I know that the OEM, they have to keep their paperwork for like 7 years. And it's because, so it made me go, well, I know we don't want to throw anything away, right? That's just, in the next day, you're going to go, wasn't there a guy with a weed whacker? And, you know, and you might have lent that out and put it in the folder as a completed task. And now we need to drag it out and go, yeah, that's right. Here's the guy who had the weed whacker and he was talking about he had. So I just think not throwing away anything during the disaster is going to be really important. So just have a box that you're just throwing the completed paperwork in and just don't worry about sorting it out. The reason OEM keeps the paperwork, one is they have this big reporting and trying to get dollars out of FEMA for reimbursement. So eventually they probably will call out to the hubs and go, how many volunteers showed up at your hub? Or
How many hours
kind of
did they
what's
work?
the scale? Because that helps them get reimbursed for funds for us to help in recovery. So that, that's a big reason to just sort of hang on to everything. So I'd be saying, we'll be talking as a hub network. Eventually we'll get word out that says, hey, OEM wants to collect it all at the end of the month, or, just hang on to it and don't throw it away for 3 months. But, definitely don't throw anything away if you can.
Did that
One of
help,
the-
Susie?
Yeah, one of the things that I ended up doing at Madison Parks Drill, there was a small, so there's the big bag, and then there was a small bag that we had from unwrapping something. And we ended up putting all the messages that we had gotten from radio in particular into that bag, and I think we dated the bag. So just little steps like that help, because you
That's
just
great.
don't want it all scrambled in one.
Yeah.
One
Like,
huge
dating
thing.
it by day is a great idea.
Ziploc bags and a magic marker. Go
Yeah.
ahead, Sarah. You were going to say something.
No, it's just that that's what is in each of those bags. Each bag has another, has some Ziploc bags in it for that, and they have tape and they have a marker to do just that. And it's great to hear that we don't have to organize it any more than by date. By date is pretty
Yeah.
damn good.
I just wanted to verbalize to you guys how I've been talking about the hubs recently. And so 4 areas, which you guys have all figured this out. Linda's using this on her banner and everything. So the 4 areas we all know about, and then the 4 truths. And I've done this a couple times with small drills where I want to make sure that these 4 points get across, and they're not connected to any one job. So I have to make sure they come up. But we stand up when communications are down. I think it's really important for people to hear that more than once. We don't accept donations. Do not let people start dumping off blankets and whatever else at your hub. So keep pinging on people so they hear that and it doesn't get away from you. And you're trying to get rid of stuff at the end of the night because people didn't hear that. We don't operate in the dark. I think that just makes people feel better and gives them some boundaries of what this system will be like. And then always talk about the one-to-many problem. We had multiple conversations this summer about that issue. One supply that needs to go to multiple families. How do you organize that? One volunteer that has more than one skill. How do you organize that? So that one-to-many problem. Real quick, the Urban Survival Skills Fair, we've had some upgrades. We now have 18 stations. We started with 12, we went to 15, and now we're at 18. I'm not going to go through all those, but I wanted to just say it's finally a little bit more organized. And every station has their own little bin or their plastic bag or whatever. So it's not as chaotic as it has been in the past. And then this is the latest station, what to do during an earthquake. And all these pictures are just examples of what to do if you're driving, if you're in an elevator, if you're in a theater, if you're outside, if you're at the beach. So it's on PVC pipe. We have, no, this is the only one right now that hangs on PVC pipe, but very, very self-explanatory. You don't need a volunteer standing there as long as your audience can read English. And oh, by the way, just got money to get this translated into 13 languages. Intuitive, self-explanatory. You don't need to stand there and talk to anybody unless you want to. But what to do during an earthquake is really easy. This is about as tall as my couch. So this fits really well on top of a table where folks can see it. Prep steps. I just wanted to put this on the record because I'm not sure how many folks are using these, but this was an idea that came from the group. I'm calling them prep steps. I've put out 4 now. So 2 in September, 2 in October. This is prep step number 2. Storm season's coming. Think about power outages and just talking to folks about power outage lights. So that was prep step number 2. Here's prep step number 4, mobile apps. Just to encourage folks to do little things at home. So giving this to the hub captains to give out to their volunteers, their community, however you can get it out, just tiny little manageable steps to help them feel successful and keep moving along this path of getting themselves organized. So modify them. I don't care how you use them, but they're there if you want them. Any other additional thoughts before we wrap up for the night? Yeah, one of the skills fairs that Matt was helping us with, the organization, the way I laid out the tables was not really conducive to making sure that everybody hit every table. So Matt pointed that out, and it was really helpful to be thinking about that blueprint before your crowd gets there, just to kind of force them to go to all the tables. Matt was talking about kind of the passport idea, where if you go to all the stations, you get a stamp, and then if you turn in your paper at the end of it and all of your blocks are checked, then we give you something. Just ways to get people involved. I have on my to-do list to modify that hub volunteer form to add a category for hub volunteers. Oh, and I was going to modify it to give people a choice of how they wanted to be connected or contacted. Sorry. I don't think there was any other takeaways except please, the things that are coming up and new things that you are coming up with, please share with the group. Probably more appropriate at a hubcap meeting than a deep dive.
Yeah, and then we just have to sort of think of where it goes in the Google Drive so we can find it. Some of us who have put old documents in there and need to get rid of some of that old stuff, winter is a perfect time for me to go and clean out some of the junk that was, early thinking that's been superseded. I keep promising to do that. And this year, I promise.